Hey everybody, it is election day. It is 2:21 in the morning on the East Coast, which means that it is something like what? East Coast. Well, yeah, it's 11:21 in California. So already we've had what? Dixville Notch went 5-0 for Donald Trump, but is it Millfield? New Hampshire went 16-5 for, I mean, I said 5-0 for Joe Biden. I said Donald Trump, I mean Joe Biden. Wow. But Millfield, New Hampshire went 16 Trump, 5 Biden. But when you check the records, Millfield, New Hampshire is staunchly Republican. They're the home, according to my mom, who did some research for me, on the Salem Witch trials, and they are heavily anti-abortion. They also went for Donald Trump by roughly the same margin in 2016, save for one fact that Hillary Clinton received one less vote than Joe Biden did this time. So Biden performed better in Millfield, and he swept the competition in Dixville Notch. That's how we started off this. But now we're turning to Oakland and the Oakland elections. And I didn't do this for much of the election campaign this time, I think because I was dismayed over its effectiveness when I used it in 2018 regarding the elections. And that I'm referring to Google Trends. And Google Trends, which I'll go to in a second, basically estimates who is searching for what most of the time. Okay. And it started in 2007 and was heavily adjusted. The code was in 2008. And went through a number of changes because the early iterations of Google Trends were such that it didn't matter what you searched for and thought that search was going to come up highly ranked. When you actually checked the results, what you got were mentions of that list content that were X-rated. And it was really difficult to ferret around that to find out what else people were searching for other than that, because it was that overwhelming. I mean, we all know that there's a direct connection between someone's interest in something X-rated and their likelihood to find that interest satisfied, if you will, online. That's an age-old fact. But what we didn't know or didn't have was a more precise measure of what else people were searching for. And Google really worked hard to filter out the adult-oriented content from the non-adult-oriented content, and more appropriately, the news content, all right? This is now 2020, and the good news is that over the last 10 years, and I think really in earnest starting in 2012, Google overcame that problem. So now, where we are is a Google News, a Google Trends, that is arguably more effective and more reflective of what people are really interested in than ever before. Because if just after that little problem, actually it was a big problem, people, bloggers, including myself, admittedly, were really interested in how they could actually game the trends, how bloggers could team up and produce certain outcomes. That was a thing. That happened starting in late 2008 then through 2009, and then through 2012. And it really gave Google fits. It wasn't until 2014, 2015 that Google figured out how to overcome that problem. All right. So now the Google News that we have is really arguably effective, quite effective. And I keep saying Google News, I mean Google Trends, and I apologize, it's late, okay? But it's election night, and I'm excited, and woo! All right, this has been a great year for Zenny62 Media, my company, with respect to election, all things elections. For example, we were credentialed to cover the Democratic National Convention for the third time in my life. And yes, if you're saying the virtual convention, I'm saying yes, the virtual convention, one and the same. And to this day, if you go to Zenny62media.com, you will see that our website mentions boldly right here that we are Zenny62 Media credential for the DNC 2020 virtual convention. And on our YouTube channel, there are videos from the press conferences that were held for each day, the speeches, our room as I assembled it. So we all have all that. It's been a great year. But now we come to, unfortunately, the end, as I say it, unfortunately. And we all are excited to find out if we're going to have a new president. And I certainly pray that we get the outcome that we need to move forward and have Joe Biden as our president and Kamala Harris as vice president. But what about the local races in Oakland? What's going on with that from a Google Trends perspective? And let me cut to the chase and show you. First of all, let's start with District 1. This is Oakland City Council District 1. And what I did, hey, welcome to Zenny62, by the way. What I did here, folks, is this is a chart. It compares the incumbent Dan Kalb on the left, as you can see. And I've got making sure that his name comes up in such a way that it's, see how it's highlighted there? Okay, that's Dan Kalb, all right? With try no right here, all right? And I made sure to lock out his name because it's very easy, given the way Try's name is spelled, to pick up a remnant of another type of search that might have a try over here and a no over there, right? And so if you have that and they're not locked together, you can make Try look, if you will, bigger than he really is in terms of search influence. So that's really something that has to be dealt with gingerly, okay? So, and then of course, here's Stephanie Walton, who is actually Stephanie Dominguez Walton, but you have to assume that most people are not going to search that way. They're going to search Stephanie Walton in that way. And then we get is this outcome. And you would say, well, how do I know that it's localized? Well, that's a very good question. And as I scroll down here, I want you to notice something. It reads in the banner, San Francisco. You see this banner right here? It says, not enough. Your search doesn't have enough data to show here, right? It doesn't mean there's no data. It just simply means there's not enough. And I'll address that in a moment. But what I want you to note here is right here. It says San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose, past 12 months. Okay. And San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose, past 12 months. And so let's take that and use a custom time range to get a better idea of what's going on here, and then say, okay, right? And there we are. And what we have is we have Kalb at 13, Try at 10, and Walton at 5. All right. And for the last 2 months. And what this indicates is, with respect to this region, okay, this is what this indicates is a let's go go back to a refresh here, is a race that's closer than one would have expected, but still in favor of the incumbent, Dan Cowell. And again, this is over the past 2 months. And note that each time there has been a spike, it has been more in favor of Dan. For example, 87 to 0 and 0 here. But then you've had instances where Stephanie was at 69. And then, of course, Tri was at 86. And these are tied roughly to different events. And then, of course, we have, once again, Stephanie, Dan, and Tri at equal high levels for the 17th, which points to forms and events which cause people to search more about them. But overall, the blue line, the one that comes up most often, is Dan's. Now, I can tell you this from looking at Google Trends for as many years as I've have, that when you have a situation where the incumbent is searched more than the challengers, 90% of all the time, the incumbent wins. Okay. And that's what you're seeing in this instance. You're seeing Dan have more interest than the others. The one question is, how will ranked choice voting impact all of this? And also the pandemic itself. But again, when you have the incumbent in the lead in this way, in my experience, it means that the incumbent's going to win. Now, let's look at the next. Now, I'm going to come back to this later, but let's take that down and remove that one, and then we're going to come back and look at the next series of available data, and that would be for District 7. This is Treva Reed against, in this instance, arguably the next front runner is Marshawn Tapman. This is over a 2-month period. And we have Treva Reed, Marshawn Tapman, and Bishop Bob Jackson. And what we have in general, if we go here, is that Treva's at 4, Marshawn is at 3, Bishop Bob is at 2, and Marcy Hodge is at 3. Okay? So what this indicates is a race that is a lot closer than even I thought it would be. If we hover over California here, this is what we see. All right, you see that? Let me make sure that this is visible to you. Let me hover that. Okay, right there. Okay, I'm going to leave that right there, because if I move the cursor, that will go away. It says that Treva received 40% of the search interest, Marshawn at 30%, along with Bishop Bob Jackson at 30, and Marcy Hodge at 0. So what this says is that, let's take this as a perspective of first place votes from ranked choice voting. It says that Treva is more likely to receive the first place votes. And the question is, how many second place votes will she receive versus Marshawn and Bishop Bob Jackson? It's quite clear that Marcy Hodge is not in the race. But right now, the way this looks is that Treva should win, but won't necessarily win. Okay? Treva should win, but won't necessarily win. Now, as to who could come out ahead of her, between Bishop Bob Jackson and Marshawn, it would have to be one of the two of them. I personally find that unlikely, because in Oakland history, women tend to do better versus men. Again, women tend to do better versus men in Oakland election history. And that's been the case for as long as I paid attention to elections in Oakland. That goes back a long way. I would say to the late 80s. That has been the case more often than not. And I famously remember when, in the case of Oakland City Council District 2, Mary Moore represented District 2. This is back in the early 90s. And a young, fresh faced attorney named John Russo blew in and thought that he was all that, as he will tell you now, he did, and thought that he was going to wipe the floor with the older incumbent Mary Moore. Well, no, Mary basically wiped the floor with John Russo. It was not pretty. Okay. And again, women tend to perform better in elections in Oakland against men. And why this is a function of the fact that Oakland has a large demographic of active, liberal, working women who are single in many cases, well-moneyed, and have great friendship and professional basis. This has been the case, particularly in the nonprofit community, which is very strong and powerful in Oakland and has been for a long, long time. So you take all of that and factors that some of you may want to throw in thinking about this and talking about it, and it adds up to what I have seen again and again and again and again. The one thing that can break that is a celebrity like, say, a Jerry Brown. But when Jerry Brown ran for mayor, there wasn't a female candidate with enough credibility and visibility to even be thought of as able to oust him or to beat him to be mayor. It just, that person had not come up. And Jerry Brown was a celebrity. So there's that outlier. But if you wonder why, for example, Jean Quan won, if you think about Jean Quan in 2010, it was Jean Quan versus Rebecca Kaplan and versus Don Perrotta. And Don Perrotta was the poll front runner. He was the person that received the most first place votes. But what happened was that Jean Quan and Rebecca Kaplan teamed up to take advantage of the then new ranked choice voting system and went around town basically saying, hey, look, vote for me, vote for her, and vice versa, right? And that's what happened. It was so to the point where, and this is actually on video here at Zenny62 on YouTube, an interview that I did with John Russo, that August 21st recap of that election. No, see, not August 21st. I'm sorry, November, because the election was, of course, in November. But that just after the election, that fall, that same week, Russo and I met that Thursday, and he said that the only way that Jean Quan would win mayor over Perrotta is if Quan received over 2/3 of all the second place votes. And he said, in no way is that going to happen. Well, that's precisely what happened. Okay. That's precisely what happened. And then, so if you think about Quan winning, and then Jean didn't run for re-election in 2014, and Libby Schaaf overcame Rebecca Kaplan again and went on to become the 50th mayor of Oakland, and then she won re-election. And again, think about who the most popular challenger against Libby was when she ran for re-election. Was Cat Brooks. But the reason why Cat lost is because Cat wasn't able to capture the Hill vote. However, Cat did outperform Libby in Google Trends from most of the election up until election day. It was really interesting. I looked at that and I actually wrote a blog post saying, hey, look, Cat Brooks could beat Libby Schaaf, and it shocked a lot of people. But the Google Trends and what Google Trends normally point to in terms of the election pointed to that. That's what they implied. So now, and that's why but that didn't come to pass. Because the question was why and what happened. So now we have a new situation. We have but also a situation that's similar. a person that helped Cat Brooks when she was running for mayor was named Carol Fife, who I actually had the pleasure of talking with. Carol went on to lead the effort known as Moms for Housing and decided that she could well serve the people of Oakland and city council, and is running for the city council seat that is currently held by her challenger, Lynette Gibson McElhaney. So the question is, how does that race look? And it looks like this. It looks like a situation where you have, and I'm going to put this here so that this breakdown comes off and you can see, what's going on. I'm trying to find that place where you can. It's Lynette's 13, Carol 23, Lynette 13, and there's a way I was clicking on this to get the outcome that I was looking for, and it's not clicking over the way that I want to. But if I scroll down here and just go, for example, here to see who's ahead, I can go through and I will tell you the person that comes up red more often than not is Carol Fife over the blue. Now, again, it's dangerous for me to say, for example, that, okay, Carol is going to be the winner here, although Carol unquestionably has raised a great deal of money and has a great deal of support. We're talking about an incumbent that, in terms of search here, is not being wildly blown away by Carol. And then look here at October 31st, Halloween, Lynette Gibson McElhaney is at 100, Carol Fife is at 0. And the last time I saw a pattern like this was when Cat Brooks ran against Libby Schaff, and Cat was ahead most of the time. But then as we reached election day or close to election day, Libby put up numbers that were clearly much greater than those for Cat Brooks. And I see some of that here. Now, and there's some full disclosure, I endorsed Lynette for re-election. And the reason I endorsed her for re-election is simply because I believe during a pandemic, it's not a good idea to change horses in the middle of the stream anyway. And it's not that I don't believe that Carol Fife would be an effective council member, quite the contrary. But there's no compelling reason to change from Lynette to Carol, in my view, at this time. Carol is very much an unknown in this instance. We don't quite know what we're going to get. With Lynette, we know what we have, and we know what she's done, and she's done a lot of good. Carol, however, is enjoying the boost of the game-changing Moms for Housing effort. But it's also controversial. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. What she did caused people to take up sides. It's like you either like what Carol did or you don't. I've had reservations with Moms for Housing, but there are others who believe that and hold that, and that we needed to, quote, do something because of the rampant gentrification, the way Oakland looks now. But the idea that we should allow takings of property without appropriate compensation is one that some people, a number of people in Oakland who are homeowners, find unsettling. All right. And so where we are is that we have a race that, while it's quite exciting, it's hard to know how it's going to fall. And if the likely voters stay to their pattern, Lynette will be in. But if the outside money translates into younger votes in District 3, then it's Carroll. And it's difficult to tell. But these numbers point to a quite literally a toss-up outcome at this point. And that's why this looks. So so let's go from there to our next look at an active race, and that is, I talked about Dan Kalb and then Treva, and then now we talk about, and of course Lynette and Carol, and now we talk about Rebecca Kaplan here. This is Rebecca Kaplan, the incumbent at-large council member, against Derek Johnson, the challenger, installed by the mayor of Oakland, and Nancy Sidebotham, who has ran for this office before and has ran for the Oakland City Council District 7 seat as well. Now, what you see here is, excuse me, not District 7, but District 6 seat, okay? What you see here, I think, quite interestingly and notable in these reports, is this where Rebecca's at 21, but Derek is at 14, and guess what? Nancy's tied with Derek in terms of interest. And then look at these search patterns. For the first time I can remember, Nancy can point to places where she has been effective, where she has been in the race, all the way to just to the 28th of October, where she was at 92, and Rebecca was at 46, and Derek was at 0. But then we come to the latest data point, which is for the 31st, Halloween. Rebecca's at 54 with Nancy, and Derek's at 0. So with ranked choice voting, I kid you not, we could have a situation where Nancy stumbles into the seat of the winner. That could happen. We could get Nancy Sidebotham as the Oakland at-large council member. Now, and there are a number of reasons why that can happen. Again, full disclosure, for those of you who haven't read, I endorsed Rebecca Kaplan to be reelected. And again, it's for the reasons I stated before. I don't believe that, first of all, I don't believe we should change horses in the middle of the stream during the pandemic. Rebecca is a virtuoso at understanding how government works, and again, forming and passing legislation, and understanding where to go in the city to get things done and where to find funds to fuel projects with the money that's needed to do those projects. And it's not a good idea to take people who know that out of the system at a time when people need the money the most, and that's the pandemic. It'd be a huge mistake. But the mayor has advanced a candidate in Derek Johnson that she feels if he's elected will be more in line with her interests. She has never gotten along with Rebecca for reasons that are best known to Libby. And this is her latest, as I called Derek, Manchurian candidate. And it's not to be insulting of Derek, but Derek has no previous background in politics. He hasn't served on a board or commission or worked as an aide. He has ran a business, and he grew up in Oakland. He's part of a gigantic Oakland family that is deep in its connections and relationships around town. So Libby selected him because he basically checks a lot of boxes that she felt were necessary. And on top of those, one of the major boxes that he's checked is that he has Kamala Harris as his cousin, right? So Derek is a very nice person, very smart, uh, and I think would be a quite interesting addition to the Oakland City Council if he were to win. But then there's Nancy, and Nancy knows where the bodies are buried. She would make an outstanding council member because she would listen to people and go make decisions. My only fear about Nancy is what she might say on the dais that would be misunderstood because she's from another generation. Hey, welcome to Zenny62. All right, an older generation. That said, I think if Nancy won, and these numbers show, okay, that could happen. All right, if Nancy won, guess what? I think she would be a very effective council member. She really would. But I think that's the exciting aspect of what we see here is the possibility that Nancy could take this. This is quite an interesting development. So I'll be back for more. I've been on for 30 minutes, but just giving you a taste of when we're focusing on more through the day and give you different live streams and reports, and I'm interested to hear what you think about all of this. Subscribe to Zenny62 and please bookmark oaklandnewsnow.com, and that does end this broadcast right now. Thank you.